Thursday of Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot. We're all decked out in red for a lot of different reasons. We're going to talk a lot about LSU, and usually I'm in some purple and gold for those days where it's LSU heavy, but a big shout out and thank you to North Carolina State for your basketball coach. We're also going to get into some early commitments in this 2027 class for Louisiana Tech and the Raging Cajuns, as well as LSU, where they stand with some top prospects in both the 2027 and 2028 classes. Really, again, just an exciting Thursday. You can blame about 30% of that on this Keurig special collection coffee I've been sipping on all morning and early afternoon, and you can credit the other 70% on the things happening in the sports world around the boot and around the nation. And maybe cut off about 5% of that for seeing Sam's smiling face also in some red in his undershirt. How are we doing today, man?
I'm exhausted, so I'm hoping that your energy is contagious. I gotta maybe upgrade my coffee selection because I need some of that jolt in my morning. No, I've been between events. I think I'm going on my fourth or fifth, maybe fifth weekend on the road. But I'm most excited for this upcoming trip because I get to go home to Louisiana for a couple of days and. But yeah, no, single dadding it for a few days has literally wiped the floor clean with me and thrown up on so many different times. I'm in the laundry debt pile, taking care of that as we try to persevere. But stoked to be here, Jarrett.
You'll be back in Louisiana this weekend, Under Armour next in New Orleans, obviously Sunday, getting a chance to go visit some schools early next week. And you really can we're doing this early Thursday afternoon. You can pull some quotes from Will Wade's thank you to North Carolina State and say this trip, this is deeply personal for you. It's an opportunity to come back home. You just couldn't pass up on a chance to be back in the boot and all those things. But
retweet.
I'm obviously real excited about some basketball things happening today between that and the NCAA tournament being back, but we have a lot of football to cover as always. Let's get into sticking with LSU and some of the top prospects in the country before we kind of look ahead to what we'll be seeing this weekend in New Orleans. Let's go back a couple days, 2028 prospects down there at Westgate. Caden Lancelin, Chance Archangel picked up 2028 offers from the home state LSU Tigers. Those guys were very excited. It's obviously significant. Two of Louisiana's top prospects in this 2028 class. There's only 5 in-state offers out now, and 2 of them reside in Wampville, USA, Wamp Vegas down there, the Westgate Tigers. And again, Caden and Chance, super excited. They've been recruited by LSU to some degree for quite a while, going back to the last staff. But, Coach Kiffin and company made the move this weekend while they were on campus as, young parts of that junior day. What's kind of your takeaway to see 2 offers heading down to 2 fantastic young prospects for that Westgate 28 class?
Yeah, those are the kind of players that you can't let leave the state if you're Lane Kiffin. So better offer early, and they're getting in there just in time, I think, for both prospects. Chance has obviously exploded from the time he was a freshman or sophomore, and now LSU is in that lead group with the A&Ms and the Longhorns, and Houston has gotten him on campus a few times as well. But this is going to be now LSU's race to try to dictate now that they're in the mix, and making a move for Caden Lancelin seems like a great idea. He's one of the best multi-sport athletes in the state. He's from Wampville, USA, where Corey Raymond is one of the honorary mayors and on all the important government boards. And, of course, the hometown to Verge Ausberry, or where he at least was a part of the education system over there at Westgate. And, listen, it's still really early for Caden. Caden is still picking up his early chunk of offers, Kentucky and Ole Miss and a few others. And now LSU is immediately a top echelon contender for both in-state prospects, right where they want to be as they have to make up some ground with a lot of their 2027s. They're doing that as we speak. They just had a terrific couple of junior days between January and spring ball kicking off over the weekends. They're going to put themselves in a great spot to compete for these guys in 2028 and moving forward.
LSU has historically had so much success in the Acadiana area, I guess, as a whole. I mean, Lafayette as well as stretching out and have had some great talent come from Westgate. But as much as we look at LSU typically being able to get guys they want in state, and that being kind of the historic storyline. Obviously, there have been some misses recently in that area. We saw a one-time commit Darius McKinley, who's now at Ohio State as an early enrollee. At Westgate itself, we saw LSU try and come in late on Danny Lewis and him end up at an Alabama. We documented the hell out of it, the kind of saga with Jabari Antoine and him ending up at Miami, where he just had an opportunity to get some early playing time for a team that made that deep playoff run. What is your kind of read on where LSU stands in terms of its effectiveness in that area, and how much confidence fans can continue to have that they can recruit the 337 at a high level? And how important is that for Lane and this new staff to make sure that they kind of keep a stranglehold on the 337 essentially?
I'm disappointed you forgot to mention the Derek Williams, better known as the
Yeah,
Raptor, who
the Raptor, yeah.
now is my neighbor out here in Austin. I don't think it's like a permanent situation where, kids in Westgate or in New Iberia or Acadiana or in the Lafayette area don't want to be at LSU. I think that some kids, especially in the NIL era, where they can go to play for a contender and make potentially more money, to play for an out-of-state program, then that's so be it. I've had multiple conversations with kids, with their parents, with their agents over the last few weeks about, making that tough decision. Now, first of all, in Louisiana is very unique, but if you think about a school, a school based in Texas, sometimes the opportunities to go in state to multiple schools makes it really cloudy. And if they still choose to go out of state, then maybe that's just the kind of person that they are. In Louisiana, you have a general more fondness over the idea of playing for LSU. Most kids were subject to that growing up. It's just a part of the culture in that state. It's not for everyone. Go ask Arch Manning if he was going to go to LSU. I'm sure he will tell you it was not really high on his list. That wasn't what he was going to do. You've heard kids like Pat Jenkins, who went to TCU and then Tulane. LSU just wasn't the right fit for that young man who's more quiet and to himself. So I think I think both with both of these 2028s, with Chance, with Caden, there's been more openness to this is a place that I'm interested in playing for. They went to that junior day in hopes of getting that offer. They've been on campus, they've camped there, they've made game day visits, they've been present around at least the previous staffs with some obvious holdovers in the recruiting department and the front office. I'm not going to say that Texas and Texas A&M, if both of them are huge, not only SEC contenders, but national championship contenders. With Caden is getting recruited by Kentucky, and Joe Sloan and Will Stein, who are offensive whizzes, and Joe Price, who has been really great in his run at UTSA, recruiting kids from Louisiana. I'm not saying that other opportunities might not be more intriguing than LSU, but I can say if they want to play at LSU under this staff and with their financial flexibility, they'll have every opportunity to stay home if they so choose to.
Yeah, you could tell talking with both of these guys the last couple of days that LSU offer meant quite a bit to them. And we talked about it a lot with regards to, the big, or one of the really big recruiting processes in state here this past cycle with Lamar Brown. I think we both talked with Lamar about that, the dynamic of LSU and Louisiana being kind of a different deal than a lot of other states, like the example you gave with Texas. And, he mentioned, I don't remember if he first mentioned to me about talking with Keelan Moses, or Keelan mentioned that he had kind of talked to Lamar about just kind of being up in the upper deck seats there, the club area in Tiger Stadium, and kind of looking out over the city and saying, man, this is what we all, not every single kid, but the vast majority of kids is essentially like, this is how they feel. This is what we all grew up wanting to do, because this is the Power 4 program in the state. And so it carries so much weight, obviously, with a lot of guys. That being said, to your point, a lot of options. I think Caden is at A&M right now. I think Chance is at Alabama right now. Those guys are continuing to kind of enjoy the recruiting process, and it's still, again, they're 2028. It's still really early for those guys, but a big development certainly for them to be 2 of the first 5 in-state guys to pick up offers from LSU. One of the top guys in this 27 class, Ahmad Hudson, who we continue to talk about so much, he was back on campus in Baton Rouge this past weekend, as we kind of previewed a little bit last weekend. Now it sounds like he's not heading to Nebraska, and that's kind of heated up your phone a bunch today of wondering why is Ahmad not going to Lincoln this weekend? Is this a done deal? What's going on? Obviously, a lot of factors there for him right now, too, as he just tries to manage a busy schedule between multiple sports. But what's kind of the latest on Ahmad coming out of that LSU visit and now not making the immediate trip to Nebraska?
Yeah, first of all, LSU has been slowly closing the gap with Nebraska since this staff arrived in December, January. He's in a group thread with Charlie Weiss Jr. and Joe Cox and Lane Kiffin. So if you don't think that he's a priority, the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the position coach are talking to him and to his family every single day. We've mentioned on this podcast that Branson Hudson, his little brother, who's a 2030 prospect, already holds an offer from LSU. His parents are alumni. His dad played famously on the hoops team. And now that it's Will Wade Day, according to all those that are hosts of the show, Will Wade, when he was the head coach of the Tigers not too long ago, put a fence around the state, as we often, use that cliche, but he did a fantastic job of keeping the best players in Louisiana in the state, which is, it sounds like an easy task. In fact, my wife has accused some LSU staffers, isn't it an easy job to keep Louisiana kids? It may sound that way, but in order to get in that position, you got to work your butt off. And Will Wade and his staff previously did a fantastic job. I have no doubt if there's a man that's going to find a resolution with this 2-sport situation with Ahmad Hudson, Mr. Wade is a man up for the task. I've seen him at countless Tiger Stadium recruiting events as the basketball coach, which was unique when we were on that beat. Nebraska is recruiting Ahmad Hudson just as, if not even harder than LSU. And I just gave the context to how hard LSU is currently recruiting Ahmad Hudson, the 5-star tight end, the number 1 tight end in the country. Matt Rule has created a position for Ahmad Hudson, which just seems like obvious because he's such an athletic alien. That's the first time Ahmad has mentioned that to me, that he, this new position is very intriguing. He's obviously very tight with Trey Taylor. We don't hear him talk about his relationship with Pop Houston as much, even though we know that they're from the same part of the state. But Trey Taylor is one of his closest friends, going through this recruiting process together. And Keith Williams, their director of recruiting, is also playing a leading role in this recruitment. That's not to say that I don't like where LSU is positioned, but Nebraska, along with big-time programs like Miami and Texas A&M, are all in line to get visits at some point, whether it's this spring or official visits before he locks in a July decision. Again, for all the reasons I have mentioned, I think that LSU is going to be in a great spot. History tells us they're going to be in a great spot. We know the kind of recruiters that Will Wade and Lane Kiffin are, and we know what playing at LSU means to someone like Ahmad Hudson, who saw his father do that. Right now, I still say that if a decision was made today, it still might be Nebraska. But we're talking about, forecasting for November, December, or July, or, whenever this decision is in. And I think by then, LSU is going to have its ducks in a row.
Certainly both Lane Kiffin and Will Wade have been highly successful and, in their own ways, innovative, we'll say, recruiters through the years in different capacities. There was so much to unpack from what you were saying in so many different directions. I'm thinking, man, maybe we need to have Antonio Hudson come on, recruit that boot at some point, and talk about all these different angles now going on and seeing kind of what I anticipate to be a rejuvenation of that basketball program. Obviously, his son going through his recruiting process and all those things. And then I scrapped all that and thought maybe we need to get Allison Spiegelman on here to talk recruiting and the ebbs and flows and what LSU should be doing or needs to be doing to keep all these guys in state. I think that would be a fantastic episode.
She has a lot to say, so we'd have to maybe adjust our time frame to make sure we could squeeze it all in.
A couple of other big developments this week for Louisiana top prospects, not LSU specific, but two other programs around the state, two FBS programs ramping up their 2027 classes. Landon Johnson on Sunday, I believe it was, the Madison Prep three-phase star, future college defensive back, became the first commitment to Louisiana Tech's class. Kid that has been a lot of fun to watch grow up, someone that I remember hearing the Madison Prep coaching staff be really excited about before he even began high school. He was just Tylen, their quarterback's little brother, but they knew kind of the athletic potential that he had, and he has become one of the stars and faces of that consistent contender of a program. Was an all-state selection this past year, all Louisiana versus all y'all selection, all those things. And then this week also Kobe Smith, the defensive end from Avoyelles, commits to the Raging Cajuns. He becomes their second commitment in a span of a couple of days, their first in-state commitment. I think a great get for those guys. Two prospects that, again, they haven't been the LSU targets that we talk about so often on here, but I think two of the in that 20 to 40, 20 to 50 range in the state this year, and two guys that I think can be great fits at those programs. What are your thoughts, maybe even just overall, on seeing the Bulldogs and the Cajuns start seeing some dominoes fall in place for their classes?
Yeah, this is the time where commitments start to fall, especially for smaller programs inside the state. This is spring practice. This is from a recruiting standpoint, these kids hear all these sales pitches essentially, and they're hearing about how they're going to be used in the offense, or what role I'm going to be playing on defense, or what are your ends do in this front, or what are your linebackers, or what are they responsible for in this system. And a lot of it used to be just quarterbacks around this time of the year, but now it's a lot of different positions. They're taking spring practice visits. They're seeing those coaches in person again. Of course, those coaches are going to be on the road checking on those guys and more guys in a few weeks. But this is their chance to see everything up close, and it's easy to fall in love, and it's easy for coaches to kind of get commitments when they're able to show the blueprint, for a lack of better terms. And no surprise that the in-state programs are starting to turn up. We're going to see a lot of this over the next few weeks. It's going to be spring game season, and then especially by July, by August, 80-90% of the country will be followed suit. But these are the first couple of dominoes to fall, and it's only going to get more and more and more from here on out.
Yeah, have stories up on the Louisiana versus all y'all site, louisianaversusally'all.com, on both those guys and their commitments to young men. I love them to death as football players, and as young men, they can be kind of quiet at times. Kobe even admitted when he was ready to commit on a visit this weekend, he got kind of shy about it and wanted to wait and let me talk this through with Dad on the way home, and we'll just call the Cajuns this week and finalize it. But guys that I think from a national scale have been a little bit under the radar, but who I think their games have a lot of potential ahead, and that those can be really great fits for them. Landon, they call him Manu, just absolute ultra competitor and great ball skills. They say they're looking at him as kind of a playmaking free safety early in his career. Kobe, who has been so productive for his Mustangs throughout high school, himself is a three-sport athlete who excels in basketball and track. He was impressive to me kind of early in his career, still had some baby fat on him, and has really trimmed down and gotten muscular, stronger than ever.
Did you ask him for any tips for anyone listening at home that could use a few tips?
Like me and you specifically, trying to
Thanks
get
for throwing us under the bus on our own podcast here.
Trying to get in that Kobe Smith shape and just continue to bulk up and trim
Burn down, baby.
And improve production overall, whether on the football field or on the writing front. Yeah, we need to get some Kobe tips. That'll be the next feature here on Recruit That Boot for next week. But very excited for those two guys. Congrats to them and their families. You're going to get a chance to see, I still haven't figured out if I'm coming down there Sunday or not, but at Under Armour next this weekend, the number of fantastic Louisiana prospects that are going to be on hand for that is kind of staggering. Not everyone's going to be there, but other than a few misses, there's a relative who's who of some great 27 and 28 prospects. Talk me through kind of the expectations, who you're going to see in New Orleans, guys you're excited to see, maybe in person for the first time in some cases, and just kind of what your expectations for camp are.
Yeah, there's gonna be a really good showing of young defensive linemen. Obviously, I've gotten a chance to see a couple of these 2027 defensive linemen, Jaden Bayonne from Alexandria being one of the headliners. There's gonna be a lot of Southeast presence along there with little Texas, little Mississippi, little Alabama, but really a lot of these 2028s as well. Ronald Crawford from De La Salle, Jurassic Carson is going to be there. I think that Joel Batiste from Carr is also expected, one of the big 2027s we'd love to get a look at going into his senior season. Man, it is the who's who of Louisiana running backs coming in, as well as some of these really talented young linebackers. Shamar Evans, of course, from Ruston going to be there, and Aiden Adams. But listen to this list of running backs: Javon Vital from LCCP, Caden Bellard from Lafayette Christian, Jaden Miles, of course, the bulldozer from Baton Rouge Catholic. No Trey Martin, even though he tore up Rivals camp, tore up the opening. And then Dalen Powell, of course, from Ruston, one of our guys, getting healthy for this year. Of course, there's a lot of talented pass catchers, none bigger than Easton Royal, who I'm wondering why I have down at so low on my roster. He's pretty, but he will not be alone. Braylon Kalai, just saw him at OT7. He is moving extremely well at 205 pounds right now. He is just a different sort of athlete and very resolute on playing receiver. Jude Chamberlain from Baton Rouge Catholic. Jacoby Campbell, I'll see for the first time, one of the top 2028s. Excited to see Josiah Morgan again. Of course, he's only continued to pick up steam in his recruitment, the big talented hybrid tight end pass catcher from Ruston as well. Ashton Stark, we know, is fantastic. Miguel Whitley, we know, is a stud, a top 100 prospect. And young Deuce Urson coming in from the 2028 class. Pop Houston, who just punched his ticket to the Elite 11, will be the headliner. Malachi Ziegler and Carson Sellers will be there. Some more rising senior passers. Knox Kiffin, of course, the top 2028 quarterback in the state. And then, again, Louisiana produces DBs at a high rate. Jaden Anding was, like as I mentioned, in the conversation as the MVP of the secondary. Jaden Keeling got that honor, the 2028 from Curtis at Rivals Houston, while both will be back competing in the New Orleans camp. Rontre Carter, of course, for Shaw, played for a state championship the last 2 seasons. He'll be back. Dylan Henry from Mandeville, your boy Landon Johnson, Man Moses from U-High, and I believe it is Jarvis Stevenson from Curtis.
Yeah.
This will be another first timer. He'll be out there with not only Jaden Keelan, but Prentice Mackey. And the whole Curtis secondary putting everyone on notice ahead of their big opener against North Shore over in Cajun County.
Jarvis is another great shout in terms of guys to watch in this 28 class moving ahead. He's kind of a similar dynamic to Dalen in terms of just he's getting back healthy now. He unfortunately missed the fall where Dalen got hurt at the end of the season, so had a chance to have that kind of breakout sophomore season. But that's 2 guys, along with, you mentioned Jacoby Campbell and some others who we started the show talking about, okay, there's 5 in-state offers out from LSU in 2028. Those are some guys to watch who I think are top flight talents coming out of Louisiana in 2028. And you just listed a hella long and impressive list of 27s and 28s to watch on Sunday. And so now I'm rethinking the fact that I haven't sent in my email to secure my spot to come down, because what a great cast of talent and personalities.
And we can get a little post-camp meal, which you're always missing out on. So,
yeah, it's true. It's true indeed. Looking forward to seeing you out here, man. Whether that be Sunday in New Orleans or during the travels the subsequent days. But anything else that you want to share for folks to kind of keep an eye on as you kind of wrap up this week and turn your attention to a little boot swing?
Yeah, I made as a self-correction. Jurassic Carson is from Lanier, Mississippi, not Louisiana. So I know you gave me a look when I said it, and I felt it deep into my plums. And then Andrew Stoffstall is another young 28 from St. Paul's. But yeah, no, this is going to be a fun camp. Jalen Haywood, of course, will be the offensive lineman from Amite, who's a senior on his weight loss journey like the rest of us. And is a target on the board at LSU. No, I'm super excited for the guys that aren't going to be at this camp. You know, Sam Spiegelman will be in there gymnasium or in their school hall getting in trouble somehow or some way. We'll be logging a lot of miles around my favorite state because you can get through the whole damn state in a day. So I'm excited to be back, excited to eat well, excited to see you, excited to see these kids who and Carr on a Sunday, you're going to have Bryce Brown, you're going to have Robert Valdez, you're going to have the whole crew. And these guys are some of the greatest coaches, not only in the state, but they're awesome people that we are blessed to know. So getting to see all of our familiar friends and obviously the kids and their parents and coaches is it's a treat. It's one of the few things I actually enjoy doing these days. So I'm all giddy. I did my whole Texas swing. I'm ready to get back home.
All that good eating you mentioned while you're coming back is probably part of the reason why I need to be smart and maybe not come to New Orleans, because I've done such a good job getting my little, spring cleaning of my body in go mode and trimming down a little bit. One New Orleans meal, I could add that 16 right back real quick. But
I'll tell you this, when you're moving around a camp, you don't realize how much you're really moving. So, if you get one good meal a day, you'll still be on track. Trust me.
I'm also glad you mentioned Schaufstall, who is another guy I have, right now. He's in my top 10 early on in Louisiana's class. He's definitely going to be a highly ranked offensive lineman in 28. I was also glad that you clarified the dynamic of Carson being from Mississippi, because as soon as you said a name that I didn't recognize, I started to worry that I'd missed a kid in Louisiana, and that doesn't sit well with me. And so I started to have my own little anxieties, and I'm glad we got that.
Yeah, 2028's 20. I'm catching up. I'm keeping up. We just did our first, top 300, as you guys all know, for 2028. So, a lot of the names are new, especially if they're not. If I haven't seen them yet, so I'm excited to get our first couple of looks at some of these young men.
There you go. He's Sam Spiegelman. He'll be back in Louisiana on Sunday for a couple days to see some of Louisiana's top prospects in person as they hit that Under Armour Next camp, as well as just kind of go about their springs when he goes to visit their campuses early in the week. I'm Jared Roser, and as always, thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, y'all be well. This is Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot.
It's time for some crawfish.